Hi, welcome back to Deep League. It's kind of crazy to think there are almost 10,000 of you now, because the most I've had listen to me in a room is like 100. In this first lesson, we'll be covering the most fundamental part of League of Legends, damage types. I thought it was going to be a quick and easy video because I assumed there were only 3 damage types: physical, magical, and true. But that's not quite right. It explains some of the weird stuff you see, and we're going to learn all about it. By the way, this soundtrack goes hard. What's wrong with that previous conception of damage is that it puts physical, magical, and true up front as the main type. That's not quite the case. Those are called resistance subtypes. You can even think of damage types like dog breeds and resistance subtypes as fur color. Most of the interactions in League, like lifesteal, or Omnivamp's AoE reduction, or Pyke's execute, have far more to do with damage type than resistance subtype. Altogether, there are about 10, but we can group and simplify to 6 or so. Let's run through them all, and you'll see why. Basic. Auto attacks and a few abilities fall here. Yasuo's Steel Tempest? Basic. Ezreal's Mystic Shot? Basic. What's special about this type is how it deals with lifesteal and what it triggers. Because lifesteal doesn't check physical damage, it checks basic damage. If you're a Corki or Yone cranking out magic damage from auto attacks, lifesteal doesn't stop working because you're not doing physical damage. Wow. Basic damage also triggers effects like Blade of the Ruined King or Wit's End. This added damage gets bundled under the basic damage, meaning your Bloodthirster still works with both. We'll group the next set under the title Ability Damage. It includes 3 real types and 1 pseudo-type. Spell damage is the type of nearly all abilities. This has no correlation with physical versus magical, so if you bought Hextech Gunblade on Pantheon, his entirely physical spear would still heal you. Persistent damage is given to many damage over time effects, so they don't trigger other effects again and again. Imagine if Teemo's Poison repeatedly activated Ravenous Hydra. Spell damage and persistent damage are also split into their singular and area types, so that effects like Omnivamp aren't broken on spacious abilities. Now we get into the niche. Pet. This is just for the basic attack of Tibbers, Daisy, and the rest of the gang, but only their basic attacks. Reactive. This is for the Bramble line so they don't trigger spell effects. Raw and Internal Raw. These are about doing true damage that bypasses shields like Executes and Nexus Obelisk. If you try to use a shield while you dove Fountain, you were dumb and wrong. If it doesn't fall into one already listed, it probably goes into proc or default. They're intended to prevent other effects getting triggered off of them and starting broken chains. Proc damage is triggered by basic damage, but it's separated so as to not activate spell effects. As mentioned, it often gets bundled under the basic damage for the purpose of lifesteal. Default damage is this weird amorphous cluster of everything else. Nocturne's Umbra Blades, to Liandry's Anguish, and even Ignite all make this list. Notice I just mentioned instances of physical, magical, and true damage all in one type. Now do you see why type is so important? Hey, thanks for listening. I spent like 90% of my time making the best soundtrack on this side of the Mississippi because this was the most boring thing I'll ever have to cover. So if you didn't quite get it all, it's totally fine. It's just foundational road work for what's ahead. Buckle up, stick with it. We're gonna have some fun.